Reloading.
G'day everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to have a look at the newly released GHK MK12 Gas-Blowback, and I'm going to give you guys my first impressions. Some quick caveats first. I haven't had this replica for very long, so this is just a first impressions video, not a review. I've only taken it out and fielded it one time for a pretty long day, so there's that. But other than that, it's just been, shooting it at home, testing it, zeroing it, etc. So keep that in mind. I'd also like to give a quick shout out to the Heavy Recoil Club Discord server. Anytime I'm having trouble figuring out an issue, I always hop in there and everybody's super helpful. So if you're new to GBBRs or you're facing a problem that you can't solve yourself, definitely hop in. We'll start off the video with just my first impressions of the looks, and yeah, I love the look of this gun. I'm really into, at the moment, hybrid type guns where it's a mix of classic and modernized, and I think I really love the look of the A1 stock, the M16 stock, but then with the quad rails at the front. I think it's just, I don't know, it's kind of the aesthetic I'm into right now. So it's partly the reason why I bought this replica. It's just I just love the way it looked, and I also just wanted to get into the GHK M4s so that I would have a kind of an understanding of how they compare to VFC, which is what I've been running mostly when it comes to M4s. Moving on to the build quality. We definitely have to start by talking about the forged receiver, which is one of the unique features of the GHK MK12. Now, I don't know much about metallurgy, but from what I read quickly online, forging versus casting gives you a lot more durability and strength. So theoretically, this receiver should last a lot longer before any cracks or anything appear. But who knows? I mean, time will tell. We'll just see how that goes and whether or not that justifies the increase in price. So I'd say overall it's built really well, although there are a couple of things that are annoying me. Mostly this handguard wobble. I've tried a lot of different ways just to try to get it to align while also tightened properly, and it just doesn't seem possible. The only kind of quick solution I came up with just so that I could field it without this wobble was to wrap some Teflon tape on the threads. So I don't know what's up with that. I haven't really spent too much time trying to work it out, but it came like this. I've disassembled it and put it back together a bunch of times, and I can never get it to align and be tight. So yeah, that's annoying. I don't know if that's a QC issue or a design thing, but that's happening with my handguard. And the other thing, I don't know if this is a real complaint, but the plastic stock feels a bit cheap to me. That being said, I've never actually felt a real M16 A1 stock. So I don't know how that compares to this, but it just feels a bit plasticky. It's a bit bendy in some places, and yeah, I mean, it's still fine, but I don't know, something about it feels a bit cheap. And that's basically all I have to complain about when it comes to the external build quality. Everything looks and feels really great, and you have all the markings, the proper markings, licensing, and it's just a very good looking replica. I especially love the muzzle brake at the front. I just love the way this thing looks, and I don't think I'll be buying a suppressor for it because it is long enough. Moving on now to the internal build quality. Everything on the inside of the receiver that should be steel is steel. That's a steel trigger assembly and steel bolt catch, steel bolt carrier. So that's all really good and should last quite a while. The hop-up chamber though, which is a newly designed hop-up chamber, that feels a bit cheap. It's full made of plastic, and I have a feeling it'll probably break soon. It's a newly designed hop-up chamber which allows you to change the hop without disassembling the weapon using this tool, this patented tool. So there are a couple of issues with this new hop-up chamber design. First of all, it's not hopping .40s properly. It just needs a little bit more hop. I turned it to the max, and that's as much as it'll do. And then so this leads to the next problem, and that's with how the tool works with the hop-up chamber, because you're screwing in this grub screw, but as you get to the end, or get close to the max hop setting, it gets stiffer and stiffer and stiffer, and it makes it harder and harder to turn the dial in the upward direction. So what ended up happening was, as I got closer to max hop, it would just get harder and harder, and then I accidentally snapped one of the gears in the tool. The tool still works, but it was kind of a disappointment, to be honest, and I really think these gears should have been made out of metal. So yeah, that's a major issue I've had with the hop-up chamber, and I've had to just disassemble it and use an Allen key to get that last, few turns on the hop-up chamber. Another thing I'd like to note is that I couldn't find buckings that look like this anywhere else. So if you guys know what kind of bucking this is, please put it in the comments. Now, as far as the accuracy with the stock hop-up chamber, it's definitely solid. I mean, it's not the most accurate GBBR, but it's definitely playable in stock configuration. As you can see in these clips here, I'm getting long-range kills, and it's fairly accurate. So I can give it a good mark for accuracy and range. It would be a bit better if it was hopping .40s or heavier BBs, but I'm going to be working on that. Overall, I would say it's a pretty accurate replica, definitely playable out of the box. That being said, I actually wasn't too happy with the accuracy, so moving on to the only upgrade I've done so far, that's the inner barrel. I've replaced the stock inner barrel for a Maple Leaf 6.02 precision inner barrel, and that has tightened up the grouping quite a bit. Unfortunately, I don't have any footage of how it was shooting before I did the inner barrel upgrade, but as you can see here, it's shooting really well now. There are a couple of flyers, but nothing really serious. Most of the BBs are landing in almost the exact same spot, and this is using .40 gram BBs at 15 meters. From memory, I would say the groupings were twice the size as this current grouping, and as you can see here, it's actually a tiny, even if you count the flyers, the grouping is smaller than the size of a human hand, and if you can hit a target that small at 15 meters, I think that's a pretty good sign that you'll be able to hit a body-sized target at 50 meters, 60 meters, no worries. But the one time I did play with the stock hop-up chamber and inner barrel, it played just fine. Moving on to the magazines. So there is an issue I found with the GHK M4 mags that doesn't exist with other GHK GBBRs or other like VFC GBBRs or whatever. It's the fact that the valve on the back of the magazine can get caught in your pouches when you're re-indexing, which can cause a vent. And that's kind of really annoying, and it happens relatively often. I mean, not all the time, but at least a couple of times a day. Otherwise, the mags are very light and they work really great. The feed lips, though, seem to be a bit brittle, and we've already had to replace one. But other than that, really happy with the magazines, and it's really nice how light they actually are, because compared to like a KWA magazine, these things are just extremely light. And in regards to gas efficiency, I've had no issues so far. The mag seemed good and the replica seems to be shooting really well, and we'll see how that goes in the future. One small issue and kind of a design quirk that I found with this replica is that the retention pin that holds in your buffer, in the buffer tube, actually came loose after the first day of fielding. When I disassembled the replica to have a look at it after the first day, the buffer just came out with the spring, and I couldn't figure out how to get this thing to stay in place, and I thought I had lost a part, but after a little bit of investigation, I found a little grub screw at the back which came a bit loose, and after just tightening that little grub screw, I was able to secure the retention pin. But from my experience, this is a bit of a weird way to hold that pin in. Most GBBRs I've owned use the actual buffer tube screwing in up until that point, which will hold that pin in place. So yeah, that was a little bit weird, but a little bit of Loctite and that grub screw was in place and probably not going to move ever again. All right, so let's move on to my conclusions now. I just want to start off by saying I absolutely love this replica. So I'm very happy with it. It looks great and it seems to be a really solid replica. It can be bought and fielded with no upgrades if there are no QC issues present, and I don't seem to have any quality control issues other than the handguard maybe. So either I'm really lucky or GHK is getting their QC in order. Hopefully it's the latter. The new hop-up chamber design is promising, but I would have been a bit happier if it were manufactured from metal instead of plastic. And same goes for the hop-up adjustment tool. Those gears should be made of metal. Also, the fact that a DMR replica can't hop BBs over 0.40 with a stock hop-up chamber is also a bit of a disappointment, because most people are not going to be using this gun for CQB, they're going to be using it as a DMR. So for now, I'll be looking into making the stock hop-up chamber hop 0.40 and higher BBs without just replacing it, but I am also considering a maple leaf chamber if that doesn't work out. If I do get it to work out, I'll probably just stay with the hop-up chamber until it breaks, and then I'll replace it for a CNC one. And now moving on to the final point, which is the price, and is it worth it? So this replica cost me around 1,500 euro. That's landed with shipping and import duties and magazines and maybe a couple of spare parts like the valves. And that's pretty expensive. Now, I don't know if the forging process justifies that price. Maybe it does. I don't know how much more that costs than regular cast receivers. So I don't know, is it worth it for you? Maybe. For me, it has been, and I'm really happy with it. It's one of my prized replicas right now. And lastly, I just want to mention that I will be Devil Hunter modding this replica for winter, and I love that I have that as an option. I've already bought the valves for it, and come winter, we'll see how it handles that. And that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, and you guys will definitely be seeing a lot more of the Mark 12 on my channel. And if you're interested to see how it performed stock out of the box, watch this gameplay video.